And my question kind of comes from something that Rose talking about healing when she said that she saw Hattie as older. When I am participating in a healing and I see a future image of somebody, whether it's an older a teenager for a kid or an 80-year-old for a 40-year-old, I get very excited. I think it's a potential data stream that I might be tapping into. So my question is, when is it my consciousness imagining this or wishful thinking, Tom? Or when am I connecting with the LCS as a possibility or a probable future data stream? Or does it matter? Just go with it because that's what I got for the particular healing.
Yeah, I'd say go with it is the best answer of all of those. But there's all sorts of reasons why anybody might get whatever it is they get. You know, if you have an intention, let's say, sometimes if I'm healing somebody, particularly a young person, and I want to know what the outcome's going to be like. You know, what's the prognosis for the next 10 or 20 or 50 years? Okay, I will look at them and I'll say, I want to see a picture of this person and how they are and what they're doing a year from now. I want to see a picture of this person, 5 years from now or a month from now. It depends on what's going on. I can think of one guy I was healing, was in some sort of a car wreck and had his spine busted and pulled apart, and all his nerves endings were all scrambled and going every which way. And I put them all back together again. And the doctor said, he'll never walk. It just can't happen because his spinal cord's had too much trauma. He's not going to be able to walk. He'll be, at least a paraplegic and maybe worse. We haven't told yet. Well, I looked ahead and I saw this guy like 3 or 4 months later, standing up and walking. Because I asked, okay, I put this much together. And I said, well, now what's going to happen? Show me 3 months. Show me that. And I saw like 2 or 3 years ahead, he was walking so well that if you didn't really pay attention to him, you wouldn't notice that he had a slight kind of, limp going on with that walk. It's almost unnoticeable. So that told me what the prognosis would be for time. So if you have that kind of an intention, I want to see how this is going to work out. Let me see what this looks like, a year from now. Or you can go in 1 month segments. It just depends on you and what you're doing and how long you want to do it. And that way you'll get what you're getting is out of the future probable database, how it's likely to turn out. And that's the way I do that sort of thing. I just look at pictures. So it just depends on, to answer your question, it just depends on what your intent is. If your intent is to see into the future, particularly if you're, looking, well, you could be looking at a middle-aged person or an old person or whatever. But if that's your intent, then you can see those pictures at any age you like. If it's a matter of you're healing somebody and you see them as an adult and they turn out to be a baby, well, that's probably just because that's the way you interpreted it. It was just your interpretation, and it doesn't have that same meaning to it because that wasn't your intent. So it depends on what your intent is and why you get that. So that would be that's the way to look at it. But in general, when you get confused and you're not quite sure what to do, just do what feels right. Just go with it and do what feels right. Otherwise, you get stuck intellectually trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. It'd be better just to do the way it comes to you at the time. And then later, when you're not healing or meditating or whatever, you can sit down and think about it in more details, try to maybe pick it apart rationally. But in the moment, while you're working and while you're connecting with people, just let it flow. It's much better if it flows organically than it is if you worry with your intellect over what you're doing and how effective it is and why you're doing it. What does this mean? And what does that mean? All that just gets in the way. Just do it. Think about all that later. Now you can think about it, but later when you're not really involved in it, you can try to pull it apart, but don't get too wound up around it. We can get lost in our own intellectual, we get chasing our tail like a little puppy, running in circles after its tail. We can get like that with our intellect, trying to solve problems, trying to come up with logical answers to problems that have no logical answer. A lot of problems. Yeah, a lot of problems don't have logical answers.
Yeah. And I like when yesterday when you said ask more questions. I like when you say think about it, because later when I go think about it, then I guess I could always ask the question, okay, show me the future database.
Yeah.
And then I could always confirm, okay, that's what I was getting. No, that's what I was
Right.
picturing them, something like that, to pull it apart later.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Mm-hmm.